Hey, Phil.
Luke, how you doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I can never tell if the microphone's too loud, too soft, too whatever. All right. Before everyone gets on here, I'll just let you know, let me take my video on. Joe De Silva had reached out to me after our meeting yesterday. Said, can I talk to you? So, we set up a Zoom for today. First thing was very complimentary. Thank you very much. You've done a great job, et cetera, et cetera. Second point was, don't worry too much about the consolidation of the schools. If you can figure out a way to tap some of that money, by all means, but I think he wanted to soften the blow a little bit, knowing that his new counterpart, maybe it may have blown a hole in the side of our plans, Yeah, it's like I know the work you've done, but let's rethink the apple here with a month left. And so he was understanding of that and appreciated and said, I get it, don't feel slighted. The other couple of things we talked about, and I'll bring this up in the meeting, but lighting. He aptly noted, as I had earlier, that you have lighting in there and they had done a lot of rise improvements to upgrade the lighting. So he recommended you not put that in there and you broaden the topic to more of HVAC repairs, plumbing, general plumbing and miscellaneous mechanical repairs, things like that. Take the lighting out where we've already done upgrades, because it said, it just brings up too many questions about, haven't you already done that before? Like, why are we paying for that again? And I have to agree, I think, but his guidance was to put it in these larger buckets. We can define a little bit more in the scopes as in the refined scopes, but as far as a broad topic, that way he'll have lateral movement on the funding moving forward, should they approve. And then the last thing we talked about is fields. I asked him about fields. He said if it was a brand new field, as long as it's not resurfacing, basically if you're going to have a field, it's got to move if you already have a field. And if it's a brand new field, that's fine. They'll provide reimbursement. He also thought, knowing Coventry, that it may be a good idea to suggest a field at the middle school. And I kind of feel that way too, knowing that lacrosse is a growing sport in our community and we don't have like a dedicated lacrosse field. We could make it lacrosse, soccer, multi-use field, high-end synthetic, and do something along those lines. And that might help capture some of those votes. So. Hey, Rob.
How are you, Luke?
Good. Welcome.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. So that was the gist, Phil, of what we talked about. I'll bring a little bit of it up tonight, but I wanted to fill you in.
Sure.
Very complimentary, very willing to help. And I let him know, I said, Phil has filled me in as far as you typically start here with funding and you reduce to here. I said, I would hope that with all your support, we can end up here.
What did he say to that?
Oh,
no, we don't do that.
No, he was, he, I think, gets it. He knows Coventry has not been, as active as we probably should in grabbing that money. And so he's more than willing to help us grab as much as we can in this round. So I think the tone was really good. We'll see. The proof's in the pudding, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
So, hey, Craig.
Hey, guys. I'm going to be Donna tonight, so I'll be doing the roll call in a minute. So, yeah, good luck. Good luck.
You have the roll?
Yeah, I have everything.
Okay.
All here. Patty Martin will be going forward, but I'll be doing tonight. So
We'll try to take it easy on you.
yeah.
I will call you back. I left my phone at work, Craig.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry. You know what? Listen, I just had a conversation with someone I wanted to just share with you. But
Today was brutal. I'm not gonna lie. So I will catch up with you. I promise.
yeah, no. You know how to find me.
I ran out of work and then I got home and I realized my phone's at work. I'm trying to unpack and one of those days,
It's all right. Hey, I'll hang in there. I see Mr. Restall.
Yeah, we got on. All right.
Can't believe it.
Lee, I don't have your, I lost your cell phone number. You're gonna have to text me.
Okay.
Okay, John Priest is coming in.
Good.
Let's see. I think I pulled him in.
Phil, I think you did an excellent presentation last time at the last meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
No problem. Trying to keep an eye out for the hands.
Yeah, I found the link back in, it was December 29th when it was sent out. So,
Yeah, I'd gotten a couple questions and,
yeah,
you know, I realized that we scheduled it before the new year, so it's always good to get a refresher.
yeah, no, I agree.
Gets buried in the millions of emails.
You know, Luke, we should have started a poll. Who would have their Christmas decorations up the longest? Either Christine or, wait, Christine, I
still
think you
have-
may have competition. Is it Miss A or Mrs. A?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Miss Anzalone, yes.
Let's see if she joins us this evening and see if she has her decorations upstairs.
Listen, in my defense, I'm calling it my winter tree now because there's no Christmas ornaments on it anymore.
Nice. Quick thinking. I like
Throw
that.
some pink on that bad boy. You got yourself a Valentine's
There
tree.
you go.
I have one better for you. The president of RIASC, which is the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, she keeps her tree up fully decorated all year long. And so the really funny piece is just
That's nice.
recently we had a meeting with the commissioner and someone on the staff said, "Oh, I love your tree. You know, it's so nice to see it." And she said, "Oh yeah." And then someone in the crowd said, "Yeah, she keeps that up all year." It wasn't like a new decoration.
It's a holiday tree.
It's every tree. You know, I keep my tree, like I have an artificial and I bring it down in the basement and I cover it with a big plastic thing
Well, that's what I do.
to keep the dust off of it. But I even take the lights off because I got an unlighted tree because I have to have a tree that you could see from the space station when it's lit up. So, so it's a lot of work to do it, but I don't think I could ever just keep mine up all year.
No.
Your house would have to be humongous.
It doesn't appear to be. I mean, and the interesting thing on this gal is that she could Zoom in another room and nobody would ever know. But right out there in a living room, she's doing her Zooming and I'm like, wow.
Own
I
it.
sup- I suppose there's worse
Exactly.
things to have behind you, so.
Yes, you own it, you know?
All right,
This
Don's
committee's
connected
fun. I like this committee.
in.
I'll say they have a Christmas tree, then you have the 1960s wallpaper,
Yeah,
Mr. Cowart.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Really like that wallpaper.
I do too.
The scary
It's kind of Japanesey like or something.
Yeah.
part is the wallpaper is actually an improvement over the paneling.
What cellar did you find that in?
It's a fancy store called Target. It's in the peel and stick section.
We call it Target.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I recognize that from my kitchen drawers.
There you go.
Contact paper.
Laughs, laughs, laughs.
I'm
Can't
doing
go
it.
wrong.
All right, I'm gonna rope everyone in here. We are, I'm assuming, gonna have some additional follow-ins. Let's say Jason Martin's coming in now, but I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. And Craig, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Luke Murray,
Here.
Alita Hall,
Yeah.
Amy Anzalone, I see Amy
Here.
here. Great. Don Cowart
Here.
with your 60s wallpaper. I don't see Dr. Dixon. I think Dave D'Agostino, did he say he wasn't able to come, I think?
Yes, he said he
Alright.
would be absent tonight.
Christine Kennedy,
Here.
Kimberly Shockley.
Yeah,
And is this your first meeting, Kimberly, or is this, all right, welcome aboard.
thanks.
Thank you very much. And everybody knows Mrs. Shockley is also a town council member. I don't know if we need to.
Oh,
I'll
on
leave it-
January 21st.
Yes. Rob Levesque,
Here.
Mr. Lucian,
Here.
all right, Mr. Martin,
I'm here.
Miss Patno,
Here.
John Price,
Here.
and Mr. Lee Restall.
Here.
All right, I think I got everybody.
Excellent. You did a fine job.
Oh, thank you.
So for those who don't know, Donna is on leave right now. I guess Patty's going to be taking over and the meeting's going forward, but Craig's our scribe for the night. So we wish Donna luck and hopefully she'll get well soon and be back with us. I'm actually going to table the meeting minutes for tonight for the approval of the meeting minutes. Mainly because I don't know if any of us had read any. I know Donna was preparing them, was typing up a lot of minutes prior to her departure. So I'll get on top of that and make sure they get distributed and that we all have adequate time to take a look. I know we're kind of backlogged a little bit with the meeting minutes, but we will get up to date. So that will be tabled for the night. Schedule check. John, I'll bring up the schedule so you can see it. Can everybody see that? Yes? Okay.
Yes. So we met last week with the town council to give them an update of the presentation. We are now working into the approval stage. Not quite sure exactly where we are in approval stage. We have updated the town council, completed a draft presentation, and I guess we're in the building committee review period.
Yeah, that's a pretty good synopsis. So we're at the 75%. As many know, we had the meeting last week. The biggest probably point to bring up here, John, is we don't have a lot of time left. We have more behind us than we have in front of us, which I think is a good thing, but it's also a stressful thing because we actually have to get the product done. So, you know, this needs to be adjusted a little. And I apologize, Alita, we'll have to get together again to adjust the schedule. But we do have a meeting with town council. I am set to give an update somewhere around mid-January. I forget the exact date, but Council President Dixon did slot me in. And then we do have a vote scheduled already. I believe Dr. Dixon put us on the schedule for the 1st of February to have the town council vote. So we should be on schedule with that. We're off a little bit on the reviews, but that's okay. That was expected. And I don't expect any issue with the schedule. Phil, did you want to chime in on anything on schedule?
Sure. So we feel we're in very good shape for the submission by February 15th. All the supplemental documentation is coming along as well as our drawings. We had a good project review meeting with RIDE earlier this week. Luke can update you on that. They suggested another RIDE review meeting sometime around the end of January, beginning of February, so that if they have any comments, we can incorporate it into the submission. One thing that's schedule related that is a to-do for the district part is a series of resolutions, either confirming those resolutions and updating them or drafting new resolutions. And they concern the district's adherence to Northeast CHIPS.
Hey, Phil,
Yes.
sorry to cut you off. I have that actually as an agenda item
Okay.
specifically.
Okay.
So we'll go over that later. I think the broader topic is you need a few critical items and we'll discuss that further.
Yeah. So other than that, from a schedule standpoint, we're continuing along and we'll support Luke in any presentations that he has to give.
Great. So last word on that is, well, does anybody have any questions on schedule at this point? I don't see any hands up. So bottom line is we're still tracking good on schedule. We've been, Phil has been ensuring that everything's getting prepared accordingly. RIDE, I'll give you a little feedback on what their comments were, but I think we've got nothing but positive on RIDE side of the equation. So I feel like we're gonna get this done. We're gonna make it happen for the 15th. Keeping in mind that we still have process beyond that, but we've taken the schedule through the 15th. One of the things that we do need to look at, and Alita, maybe I can pull you in on this again too, is looking beyond that date. We've looked at it from a construction standpoint, but we need to look at it from a design and ramp up, like what's next standpoint. So we kind of took it to the February 15th when we originally did the schedule. And I think, I don't know how the committee feels, but I think it's been very effective of keeping us on track and ensuring we're hitting certain targets. So I think creating a new schedule will continue to do that for us. Any other feedback on that particular topic?
I just have a quick question. I saw on the calendar, it said school committee meeting 121. Is that a special meeting? I thought our meeting was the 28th of January. I could be wrong. 121 is the all-day referendum, isn't it?
It is. You're saying, yeah, it was. That was part of the original schedule. We drafted this schedule months ago.
Okay.
That was, I think, based on a perspective date. That was before we even adopted the calendar. So,
Okay,
like I said, this needs to be updated a little bit.
all right. I just didn't, because we don't have a school committee meeting scheduled for the 21st, so we would.
We could create one. I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm saying that's up to you and Madam Chair here. So I just wanted to point that out, that right now we have a FTM scheduled for the 19th. So.
yeah, no, agreed, and that is an important date. We don't want to have people not show up because they're at a school committee meeting. All right, moving on to the chairman's report. So we have had a lot of activity. I'll just update you on. As many of you know, I've been working pretty closely with Phil, trying to get some of the hurdles down. Just so you're in the loop, on the 5th of January, first of all, let me say this. I want to thank everybody for what I thought was a very good, productive meeting with the town council on the presentation. Phil, you did an excellent job. I think conveyed the information clearly, and the fact that we were all there, even if you didn't speak up, the fact that we're a unified group advocating and showing our voice and the collaboration that's happened on this project is key. And that's gonna be the key to moving forward. So I do want to thank you all for that. And I hope you feel, we'll do a little bit of an after action review in a minute, but I certainly felt like it was productive. On the 5th of January, I did have a meeting with the superintendent and representatives of School Point, as well as Phil, on the website. So as many of you may know, the school committee had a presentation, a month or two ago to just kind of get a sense of a new vendor that came on board who's going to be redoing the entire district website. That includes every school. They only focus on schools as far as website development. And I had asked the superintendent, since we're launching this effort, we're really going to have to pivot to communication. And I know this has been an ongoing discussion, to put us on a priority scale to have the first website pages dedicated to the building effort. So we had a very productive meeting, kind of outlined a bit of framework on what we'd like to see. I would hope tonight we can have a discussion. We do have a topic on the website specifically, and Phil can share some of his ideas, and hopefully you'll contribute any of your ideas on what should be on that page. So I'll leave it at that. On the 11th of January, I did have a phone meeting with Steve Massaroni from PFM. He had sent out a financial document, which for financial planning. I actually will share that briefly, let me bring this up on my screen. Can everyone see that? So you're going to see a lot of numbers here. This is part of a financial plan that he's starting to lay out. The important thing is he's starting to look at the reimbursement rates from the state aid, which is 42.8%. And he said he will adjust this to the 0.8 What we'd look at in total aid, the 49 million, the pay-go amount, so that's money up front that RIDE pays essentially as we start the project. So that would come off the top. And then what essentially is our bottom line bond amount after the pay-go amount. So that's the 77,400,000. I won't get too deep into this because it gets a little complex on the bond anticipation notes, how those would roll out. There's a couple options on how we plan. The larger number is the per year debt, which is approximately after the state aid, we're looking at about a $3 million debt load per year on a bond. Okay. What does that mean for the average resident? I don't know yet. And that is what I push Steve on is we need to understand how that debt is spread with the debt cliffs that we have. So this may mean $100 to $200 for the average resident a year. This may mean less, this may mean more than that. I don't know. That's part of the financial plan. And the first time I've shared numbers was at our meeting last week. So unfortunately, I have reached out to the town twice. I haven't received a response. The town manager needs to get with Steve to finish the financial plan because Steve needs to know how this debt filters into the overall town strategy. So this is obviously not the only debt the town has for capital improvements and other things. So this needs to be looked at as holistically from the town standpoint. So I'll be working with Dr. Dixon and hopefully the town manager to get this wrung out within the next week or two. And we will have some hard numbers on what the impact would be on an average house in Coventry if a bond were to be approved. The other thing you'll notice here is we didn't include the extra 10% that we would anticipate to get from the bonus incentives. Part of the reason for that is because we can't count on those absolutely at this phase. So we're being very, very cautious at this point. However, I would say that based on conversations with RIDE, past experience that Phil has had and others, that we can hopefully count that in. That 10% has a major impact on the number. I asked Steve Massaroni to do a comparison on the 42% versus the 52% so we could see how much that impact is and we can start laying that out. And I know that RIDE in our meeting, which I'll talk about in a minute, had also been pushing for us to see if we could grab some more of the bonus money to increase our reimbursement percentage. So does anybody have any questions on that? I know I laid a lot out there. Anybody?
Luke, I just want to mention that the financing plan is a part of the stage 2 submission. So we will want to make sure we have a good handle on that before February 15th so that we can incorporate that accordingly.
Agreed. Ms. Shockley?
Just because of the large numbers we're talking about, is it 52% or is it 42% and 10%?
It's so it's 42.
It makes a difference with this.
It does. So the school housing aid, the base housing aid that we get is 42.8%. So that is like our reimbursement for typical capital improvements that's prescribed by law. The additional 10% is additional bonuses that we're tapping into because of the nature of work that we're doing. So we feel that it qualifies. We need to submit the report stage 2 to RIDE to ensure that they feel it qualifies. And even with that approval, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't get the full commitment until you're done with the project. However, as Phil noted earlier, many cities and towns have received kind of as firm a commitment as possible prior to going to bond to ensure they can count on that extra percentage. Does that answer your question?
Well, no, I understood what the 10% was. It's just if you get 50% off of 100 and then 50% off of 100, it's 25. It's not 100% off. So I was wondering if 42%, if we're getting 52% off the top line, or if we're getting 42% off and then at some point 10%, and it sounds like that. is taken off if
No,
we conform?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily know.
I went to public school, so I
Right.
know a little bit about.
I always think it was 52% off the top. Well, that less the pay-go money because the pay-go comes out. And that kind of reduces your overall percentage because they're taking the pay-go out first and then they apply it. Oh my, who's dinging on me? I muted.
No, I think just based on how it's going to work, that makes sense.
I will get you an answer. How about that? I'm still getting my own mind wrapped around some of the numbers with PFM because he launched into a couple different strategies, whether we were to bond first. His biggest thing was look at the yearly amount, that 3 million amount. That's about the debt load on a yearly basis you'd be launching into. He did mention that Town of Coventry does have some debt cliffs in 23, 24, where we'd have likely about $1 million of debt coming off per year. So that matters in the overall strategy on financing debt. Plus, there's other things that are going to happen over the next 20, 25 years that we might want to do, like roads or town buildings or other things. So we have to look at that. In the meetings that I've had with PFM, I've been very clear, like we're a school building committee. Our goal at this is try to focus on the school improvements. The town's job is to come back and say, all right, how does that fit in the larger town goals? And can we deal with the debt that we're proposing here? But I need to know the answer fairly quickly because we're a month away. So I'm working on it. We also, not long after I talked to Steve Massaroni, had a meeting with RIDE, with the school building authority, all of the members, including one new member of the school building authority. And I felt like it was a very productive meeting. Phil, you want to give your kind of overview of what went on?
Sure. So we presented to Mario, Christine, Dr. De Silva, and Manuel's replacement. His name escapes me, but he is an architect who just started this week and is coming up to speed. So we reviewed the project at a very high level from the very beginning. We talked about Coventry basically having to choose to go down a particular path in the very beginning, recognizing, similar to all other communities, that there are many needs and you have to prioritize which one you're going to move forward with. So they appreciated the fact that Coventry has some other long-term master planning initiatives to start to think about, but recognize why they chose the middle school. They seem to support that investment. They were pleased that there are going to be other investments made throughout the district. They recognize the level of that investment because it may have to align with future master planning efforts that Coventry may undertake in the next 10 to 15 years. They suggested pursuing another incentive for the bonus, and that is one that focuses on capacity and enrollment. And they encouraged us to look at the functional capacity of the middle school as it is now, its current enrollment, and what we are projected to have in terms of the size of a building. He said there may be an opportunity for another incentive, which would be another 5%. So we're going to be doing that in our analysis of the stage 2. And if we can certainly capture that, we will. They concluded with suggesting we meet again around the beginning of February so that we can show them the level of documentation. It's not unusual for the school building authority to maybe focus in on one particular item. And over the last 2 weeks, we frantically address it to a level that we feel will satisfy them. So when we make the submission, they recognize that we heard what they were saying. So we are prepared for that. We're also prepared for the supplement that is usually requested after the submission. Usually around the beginning to middle of March, we will get an email with a list of items that they would like to see additional information on, and we will have about a week to provide that. So we are prepared to submit. We are prepared to respond. They did mention in this particular case that the submission would be electronic. We will do it as we have done so in other municipalities, a very well-organized, bookmarked PDF, so everyone can navigate the documents. It'll be voluminous, but even Dr. De Silva mentioned the three areas that they particularly focus on. One is Section 1, which is the summary and the prioritization. Why are you doing what you're doing and what priority is it? Next is the costs associated with that. And the third is this the best alternative? Is this the best investment for Coventry? So we pay particular attention to that in our narratives. And, I feel very confident that this will be a successful effort.
Thanks, Phil. So I'll lead into my next thing, which was, last thing on the chairman's report, almost last thing, is today. So following the meeting with Phil and the SBA, Dr. De Silva reached out to me and asked to have a Zoom call with me personally today. I did have a meeting with him. I wasn't sure what it was concerning, but he wanted to thank the entire building committee and myself for what he considers a very, very, very positive effort. The fact that we've done such a heavy lift. He knows Coventry well. And to be honest, his opinion largely is that Coventry has, as a community, has not invested in its schools and has not done a lot in the past decade. And they essentially want to give us money. They want us to put some investment in. They realize we've struggled as a community to do this. So he wanted to know that we were supported. Of course, I always say, show me the money, right? So I was saying to Phil earlier, I said to Dr. De Silva, Phil keyed me in that you usually start here and you cut it down to here, but we're hoping on our process, you'll just keep it here. And my hope is that they will. It sounded as though, if anything, they were trying to figure out ways for us to tap in to the additional bonuses and encouraging us. So if there are ways that we can craft it to tap into those bonuses, we will. What I don't want to do is do what my wife likes to do. I'll throw under the bus at CVS and say something's on sale for 50%. So I bought it anyway. And I'm like, but you still spent the money, right? So what I don't want is just have the town spend more money saying we'll get a reimbursement on it. Well, we're still putting out more money. So we've identified a number. I think that there was some rationale on why we identified that number. Some of it ties back to as recently as the impact report of identifying that 85 million, but also Jacobs and other documentation. So we'll see what happens. He also did strike a couple things I had mentioned to Phil earlier. One was, instead of identifying lighting at the elementary schools, he recommended we keep in our report broader based improvements. So HVAC, general mechanical, general plumbing. So it could potentially slide some of that money, knowing that we had already done a lot of lighting improvements with the RISE efforts, the energy efficiency improvements in past years. So that was one thing he touched on. He stressed, and I mean stressed, we need to make our maintenance requirement. As many of you know, this came up recently where money was diverted from the town to the school district because of a state law that requires school districts to put a certain percentage of their operational budget toward building maintenance. If we do not keep up our end of the bargain on that, he said that we may not even qualify for the necessity of school construction effort because we're not proving that we can actually maintain the buildings. So why should they give us the funds? He encouraged us, and I'll key Craig in on this, to spend out the 400,000 that we've already been diverted as soon as possible, if possible this fiscal year. So hopefully I know that we're already tracking on doing improvements that will use that money. And I did let him know that. So it will be extremely important for council to realize that, but as a community, that we need to start investing in school facilities, because if we want to tap into the state funds, we need to show that we're investing in the facilities ourselves. As they say, you need to have skin in the game. So it was something that he stressed. I can't say how much he stressed it emphatically. And said that especially the next year to 2 years while we're undertaking the approvals in this effort, that we really need to ramp up and take care of it. So I let him know we've heard him and that we will work on it as a community. The last thing I did talk to him about, and it was a question I had, I know a few of you had, is are athletic fields reimbursable? He let me know that if they're a brand new field, not in the same location, it's not a resurfacing, not a renovation, that it would be covered under reimbursement. It has to be tied to the physical education program of the school, and it can't be just something you're putting in to acquiesce to the community, you know, as a larger community field and not affiliated with the school. So I did let him know that we have a pretty budding lacrosse program here in Coventry, soccer, just general broad sports. But I think lacrosse especially is something we don't have many dedicated fields to, and that we may want to consider as a committee of including a high quality sports facility, maybe singular field at the middle school to accomplish some of our goals. As we know, athletics are important in our community. It's something a lot of people identify with, and I think if we're able to get, let's say, 50% reimbursement on a facility, it's a pretty good deal, and you know, may provide something. So I'm putting that out there for any input you may have into that comment, but it's something we discussed. So I'll open it up to committee. Does anybody have any questions, comments on what I just reported? Don?
Just two things. I was also curious about the athletic fields. East Providence recently had posted a video around their high school project that I stumbled across on Twitter, and it was a virtual rendition of what they're working on, kind of mixed with what actually is in place. And Alita may know more about this than I do, but one of the things they kind of called out was the field that they were constructing behind the high school. So it made me wonder if that was reimbursable or not. And then the other thing I was going to say is I know a few communities who have put in fields, lined their fields so that they were multifunctional, so that you could use that same field for soccer, lacrosse, football, and a few different sports. And if you use turf, the lines stay versus, you know, having to reline them for every single game.
Yeah, synthetic turf would be something that we could look at. Certainly lower maintenance and higher cost up front, but I think we've seen as a town, you know, it's difficult to maintain athletic facilities. So something we could look into. Anybody else? Alita, did you want to comment on that?
I was just going to say, if I may, for East Providence, wonderful project, great CM over there, by the way. But as far as the turf goes, the OPM, I mean, I wasn't involved in all the upfront stuff, but the OPM told us that the fields, they didn't get reimbursement for the turf. And I mean, I'm not sure, the football field is back where it was. It's pretty much right at the same location. And then the soccer fields are soccer / softball or baseball, new turf in the front. But I'll have to, I'll try to do some digging and find out maybe why, where I was told we didn't get reimbursement, but you said Joe's telling you now, Luke, that it's reimbursable?
He was very specific. The field has to move. Can't be
Oh, it has to
resurfacing, can't be, so I let him know that we were essentially moving 2 small baseball fields. That was baseball or softball, I don't even know on that. That we would be relocating or eliminating fields, and that prospectively build a new facility. And he said that would qualify as long as it's tied to the physical education program of the school and sports at the school. So we'd have to look at that, but it would certainly be something that we may want to include as part of our pie going in. And then I think, I mean, my personal thought is this: we all know Coventry, you know, being blunt, Coventry is a sports community, and I think if we think it's part of the basic education program, which we saw the pushback this year when we tried to, you know, I guess unfund sports or have to balance the budget on the back of sports, the pushback on that. So I think, you know, in looking at our need, we may be remiss of not looking at it now, considering we may have opportunity for a good amount of reimbursement on a facility, so. Anybody have any other thoughts on that? Ms. Shockley?
Just going on what Don said, I do think if it's going to be lacrosse, it should have some sort of crossover to, you know, soccer, for instance. I think they're typically similar size fields. And, you know, when you look at the people who are going to vote on this, I think it's more of a soccer community presently than a lacrosse community. And you want to make sure that, you know, you're hitting more than one group. Love lacrosse, but I just think making it so that we're also improving another field, or maybe being able to reach out to a much larger organization like Coventry Soccer Association than Coventry Lacrosse Association to get maybe other teams playing on that field as well. Practices or
point.
whatever.
Good point. And I think, you know, we can look at that field, you know, 360 by 220. I think it's a normal soccer field. When I have a background in athletic field design, so I have some of this. But yes, we typically would line them, especially with synthetic turf, you can line them, tuck them in blue lines, white lines, yellow lines. They all serve different sports. You put the goals in. You can do cross youth soccer opposite the field. There's many things that we can do. We can, you know, we could go so far as consider track and other things if that is a need. I think we'd need to dig a little deeper with Jason Martin and the administration on what type of athletic need there is at the middle school specifically, because we obviously want to tie it to the program. So it's a good point. I think we want to make it as broad as possible. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Luke, and Luke, we also do the football field in multiple different color lines so that we can play, you know, soccer senior night or Friday night lights game. So that is something that we do pretty regularly.
Jason, do you know, do you have a sense of the need for another field, or, you know, I mean, obviously, go ahead.
We're very protective of the football field to make sure that it gets the rest it needs so it can recover correctly. And there's definitely a need for some sort of field that lacrosse can kind of call their home. Soccer has a really nice field. It's in good shape. I think it's a little smaller than they would like. But lacrosse really doesn't have a place to call like their home. We do play games on the football field, but that's the field that's lacking. Because we have a baseball field, we have a softball field, we have a football field, we have a practice football field, we have a track, we have, you know, the D section, we have the high jump, but lacrosse has just a tiny corner of the complex that they use for practice.
Right. Ms. Shockley, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just was wondering, because I can't recall, the older group for Coventry Rec for the summer camp, they don't go to the middle school, do they? I know they don't go to Guy Lafave.
Yeah,
They go
can't
to
talk
that
without anybody.
Foster, they go to that park up Station Street. What's the name of that park?
Oh, Foster
Foster.
Field over there.
Foster
Okay,
Street.
because I was
Yeah,
just
they
thinking.
use it.
could be a
Shockley, they
crossover.
use a couple different locations. They definitely use Upper and Lower Foster. They use Payne, and I want to say that they may even use Ricefield for certain things, but they don't use the middle school.
Craig.
I just have a quick, I tell people I live in Attleboro. We're building a new high school, and it wasn't part of the project, but evidently they had some extra funds. They built this incredible turf field that's probably the size of 3 soccer fields, but it has every sport you could want on it, including softball. I thought it was dirt, but they have a softball, a diamond. And the nice thing about it is, like, we have a nice football field, but nobody can use it. Let's face it. When it rains, youth sports can't really use it because it's grass. And I think if we really want to appeal to the community, I think we need to appeal to all the sports and then be equitable in allowing them to use it. And like Jason says, we're protective of it because it's grass and it gets damaged very easily. We have allowed youth sports to have like a special night, a special soccer night there, but I really think that the community needs some space where all different youth programs are able to utilize it. And that's why I think, again, I know it's not environmentally friendly and green, but I feel the turf field, artificial turf, would be a nice enhancement and appeal to many, many people in the community. And I think we can be very, very creative with that. So,
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I've done them with softball, baseball, puffed it in different colors, and there's a lot you can do with it. Differing opinions on the synthetic turf, but one thing is it holds up, and you argue after the time you irrigate and fertilize, how environmentally friendly is that? So, does anybody else have any on that topic before I move off? I guess my last question is of Phil. If we wanted to include that in the scope at this point, I know we're pretty far down the road. This is coming up. We didn't have it on our plan. Is this something we need to show on the plan or just bring into the scope as far as verbiage into the report that we're going to look at it as part of a stage 3? How does this work?
Sure. So, well, how it works is that you just caught me immediately emailing Rick and saying, call Sam tomorrow morning. I want to show a lacrosse field on that site plan immediately. So
Same Hemingway over at
yeah,
Garofalo?
at Garofalo.
Okay.
Yeah. And basically what I want to do, and Rick, I'll just tell you, take that parent loop, widen it out, put that field right in the parent loop. It'll I
Let's
want to own
talk.
it for now. I want to own it for now. That's all.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about the location because I think Foster Field side might be a little better from a community aspect.
Yeah. I just want to get it on the drawings and in the estimate. That's all.
Right. Yeah, we can work out the details in stage 3. We want to get it on as a bookmark. Is everyone okay with, at least if we bookmark it in as part of the scope for the stage 2? I see a lot of nodding heads. I don't see anybody or hear anybody. Okay. So I'm going to assume that's good. So Phil, if you could go ahead and track on that, we'll pull that into the scope. We can figure out the details later, what the cost is of that. All right. Christine.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So is that an increase to our budget, or are we going to call this scope creep and have to find somewhere else to take that out of?
Bill?
Yes and yes.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to talk about what the balancing is of the cost. I can tell you a reasonable quality synthetic field is $1 million right out of the gate. That said, there's probably a sliding scale, as you know, Christine, once you mobilize and some of the earth materials come in, we might see a little savings on that. But yeah, if we're splitting the difference on the 50%, if we have to, spend that million, 85 versus 86 million, you got the bond votes and everything, we might have to make that consideration and an adjustment. I still need to talk to the town manager on where the finance plan comes in too, because we may have to cut down a little bit just as a matter of overall finance. So we'll work it out. By the next meeting, we'll have an answer. Okay. Sound good? All right. Anybody else on that topic before we move on? That was just the chairman's report. That was a lot of information we knocked out right there. So I'll move on. I did want to touch on the 75% draft presentation and give the committee a chance if they had any additional questions after kind of sitting on it for a week and kind of synthesizing what Phil presented. I know you've all been in the loop, and also your individual perspectives on how things went. Actually, through time, and just give you the opportunity to say your piece or whatever you want to say, if you don't mind. So Rob, I'll start with you.
One of the questions I had was, I know when the presentation was made to the town council, we talked prior about the well at Weston Coventry, and that wasn't on the list that was presented. Is that still on the docket, the well? Like, are we still, because I know you actually brought it up, Luke, about the well.
Yeah. Phil?
Yes, we have it in the package.
All right. No, other than that, I mean, I'd still like to see that ceiling painted in the gym at the high school. We're gonna spend the money on the bleachers, we're gonna spend the money on the floor. I'd still like to see that ceiling painted. Other than that, there's a few other things, but I'm good right now.
we actually wanted a roof that opened at the high school. I don't know if that's going to make it. Be the only high school in the
We talk about a painting package, say for instance, Hopkins Hill, all right? We walked in that gym, in the upper right-hand corner when you walk in the gym, there's a within every
surrounding the efflorescence in the gym, I can't necessarily speak to. What we try to do in the stage 2 is to identify the scopes of work so they can be estimated so that we can maximize the dollars, both for your bond and reimbursement. Stage 3, following a successful bond campaign and approval, when you bring the design teams on board to develop stage 3 documents, then details such as that are corrected as part of the scope of work. If we have seen something so outrageous, we would have identified that so we can include that in the estimate. But it's not uncommon for legacy roof issues to evidence of that failure to still be evident when we go back in and paint it. So I'd probably say in stage 3 is where all those details are addressed. In stage 2, we try to get as much money as we can for you to cover that.
Thank you.
And I think that goes to the earlier point I made about what Joe De Silva had said, is try to keep a few of those line items malleable, flexible. So when we get into stage 2, if we find we want to move some of that money, it's not gonna impact the scope so much where we have to go back to RIDE and get it reapproved. Now, effectively, as long as we stay in bounds on general masonry repair of the building shells, then that could be a lot of things, right? So that may be a strategy we can implement.
All right.
Luke?
Thank you.
Luke, there is one thing in particular that I want to remind everybody of, is that, as Luke just mentioned, the scopes of work should stay flexible, and we identify them so that they are. However, when your approval comes in, the memorandum of agreement has a dollar amount that is assigned to the school building. So the scopes of work within that school building has some flexibility, provided we identified it, and kept it general. But usually only once throughout the entire campaign do they like to see you amend the MOA and move money from one building to another. They only like to see you do that once, if at all. So it's going to be important that we make sure that we're comfortable with the dollar amount that we assign to the building to address the needs that we identify at that building, because those dollars will stay at that building, and it better be a really good reason for them to move to another building after this approval.
Thanks, Phil. Lee, you're up.
Okay, well, things look going pretty good. I have one question for Amy. The library, is that still an issue for Western Coventry?
So Jason and I met over vacation and started to, because we're working on budgets right now, and started to plan how we can take the room that has been designated as the nurse's room right now and put it back to being a library, and how we can use the old nurse's room, and kind of, Jason can speak up here, how we can do some work in those rooms to try to make them accessible for one of our classes to move into that section of the building possibly. We know that we have we're space challenged there right now. And I think we came up with a reasonable plan to work it out. It's not just space challenge, but it's also bathroom challenges right now at Western. Believe it or not, we only have one faculty bathroom right now that is, always available. The only other bathroom, and that's for males and females to use it, and it's only has one toilet in it. There's only one bathroom. The other bathroom is kind of buried down behind the cafeteria. And it's certainly not where anybody really wants to go. And again, it's only one toilet. So we're definitely challenged in terms of space, but I do think Jason and I worked out a plan to kind of make it work.
Yeah, Amy, it's definitely make it work. It's kind of like a chess game.
Yeah.
Just trying to move the pieces so that we can get through, but if there was ever any additional programs there's nothing.
Yeah. We don't have anything.
I had very fond memories of that library because that's where Barry Ritchie used to have his principal advisory committee meetings. And it was packed with books for all grades, for all interests. And the libraries in this town, the libraries in this state actually are very, very involved in the academic area. And it was a great library. I was really sad to hear that you had to use it for another purpose, which we understand. And hopefully that purpose is going to go away with the greater the number of vaccinations that take place. But
Hope so too.
just wanted to check on that. That's all I have, Luke.
Okay, thanks, Lee. John, you're up.
Thank you, Luke. I was very happy with the meeting that we had with the town council. I didn't see any issues or concerns that came up immediately at this point, based on what Rob and Phil have just brought up about the flexibility. So there's a few small details that I think still need to be worked out, but besides that, I was very satisfied with the meeting.
Thanks, John. Kathy, you're up.
I agree. I thought the meeting went very, very well. I thank Phil for being so, I just thought it was really well presented, concise. I heard a lot of positive feedback from some people that said they loved the presentation. They thought it was very well done. I did have one question. I don't know if this, if I should know the answer to this question or not, or if it was discussed somewhere along the line. Someone asked me if we were going to get new seats for the auditorium at the high school. And because the seating there is so horrific. And I said, I'm not sure. I said there will be some enhancements to the high school. I'm not exactly sure what those will entail. I know there's going to be some painting and stuff like that, but I don't know if that's on our list. I'm not sure if that would be in the scope of the work, but there are so many chairs in that auditorium that are literally broken. And it's kind of a mess. So just wanted to ask that question.
Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't have that as part of our scope, right? We focused mostly on the gym, the painting package. We didn't have the auditorium seats in there. So
yeah, I didn't.
Certainly something we can consider if we want to have Phil revise that scope. The question is, what gives? We have the science labs. The science labs
I
is
know
a
the
kicker
STEM
because
labs are important. Yeah, I
They
did
are,
mention
because-
that we were going to get new STEM labs.
they qualify us for the bonus as well,
Yeah,
on the educational. But Phil, any thoughts on that?
No, but again, at least from an estimating standpoint, we can certainly identify that as a note on the drawings. And if we know the quantity of seats, it certainly can be estimated. And then you can defer this decision later. But certainly getting a little bit more information is not a heavy lift.
Phil, what happens if let's say we bid out the gym improvements? You estimate whatever it is, $500,000. It comes in at 400,000. We have 100,000 left. Do we have ability to move that money, let's say, to a auditorium seating under an alternate situation?
Yeah, provided it's identified in the capital plan in the stage 2 in a way that has it covered. The auditorium seating happens to be something that's rather specific. We will have a general catch-all for other work at the high school in the event you recognize cost savings on the gym floor replacement, for example. But those would be typically HVAC, electrical, door hardware, building components. But auditorium seating is a little specialty item. Not that we can't capture it and include it in the capital plan. It's simply just a line item, and we could just call it auditorium improvements and see how that goes. I have a funny feeling it would probably be fine. If it's not, during that supplemental time period, they'll say, please identify scope of work indicated by auditorium improvements.
So I think the bottom line is if we can keep, as I like to say, and miscellaneous other items in there, that would be helpful because things like this are likely to come up as a stage 3. And if we're lucky enough to hit a good bid environment, then maybe we can afford some things like that. So certainly keep it on our radar as far as the auditorium seating. Ms. Shockley, you're up.
No, I'm new. I think I've asked my questions for the evening. I really do appreciate the presentation for the town council. It was really informative. You know, having paid attention throughout the course, I feel pretty on top of where you are. And I really appreciate the work that's gone in so far.
Thank you. Christine.
Yeah, I think that the presentation went really well. I mean, it was well put together and presented well. I'm super excited about this project and what this committee has been able to achieve. I really hope it all comes to fruition. I feel like at the end of all of our discussions, I'm left with wanting to do more. You know, every time I hear Amy talk about her school and, you know, you just wish that the funds were endless so that we could take care of all the projects. But I think this is going to lead into maybe this communication strategy that we have coming up next. I feel like sometimes when we're talking and giving these presentations, I leave wondering, are we telling people the right thing when we talk about maybe some of the high school things that we can't do but we throw out words like, oh, it's our flagship school. You know, so I just want to make sure that we're giving that the right look to say, you know, as a committee, we've looked at all this and, you know, we're all in the weeds with it. So we know that this is what we chose because we feel like it's the right thing, but I just want to make sure we're leaving everybody with that same taste. I hope that makes sense.
It does. You're telling me you want to be the communication coordinator. So choose your words carefully. No, we will talk about communications tonight. You're absolutely right. And I appreciate the fact that you want to do more and you want to continue on. And I encourage us all to continue on, stay positive because we're actually not in the fun phase yet. I think the actual fun phase is stage 3, where if we actually materialize, we can really define the shape of what these full improvements look like. We start getting into the weeds on what the building design looks like and what, you know, like Rob said, you know, what are the patches and repairs we actually hit? We're kind of grinding it out right now, doing the, you know, some of it's fun, but some of it's not so fun because you got to kind of sit and wait. So appreciate your patience. Mrs. A, you're up.
So I also want to say I thought you guys did a great job, Phil. Fantastic job at the meeting the other night. And I couldn't help but think during it, what an opportunity it would be, Phil, if we could have you talk to administrators and district staff about the project. Remember, a lot of us are community members. I feel like we got to get this excitement out there because sometime soon, I don't remember if you said it was November, we are going to vote. And a lot of the teachers live in town. We want them to talk to their neighbors, and it isn't going to happen in a short window. We need it to constantly be talking about it. So you did a great job. I also want to thank you for bringing up the well, because I do think wells and those big projects are things that we can't lose sight of. I also thought about things like when we were talking about this, like leach fields, because I know we talked about sewage, connecting to the sewage for there's for
Tyoke.
Tyoke, I think it was. Yeah. You know, where do our leach fields and things sit right now in the schools that aren't connected, which I don't know which ones aren't. I know we're not. So you know, how are those looking? Because it's another big project. I'm happy to see that RIDE wants commitment from the town. I think that is a really big message to get out to, that we need as a town, as a person who's lived here for a long time now, that we need to commit to improving our buildings and regularly, and not just like once in a blue moon every 10 years going out for a bond. And I also liked the fact that RIDE wants us to relook at some things and make sure we've done some of those. I don't remember what they called them specifically, but plumbing, toilets, things like that, that, you know, maybe instead of lights and or whatever. I wouldn't know which one you should do first, but I think they're all really important to keep in mind, that I don't think we go out for a bond and then all of a sudden some of those big things like go, whether it's plumbing or wells or leach fields. I don't think that would go over very well if we have this one big beautiful school and then the really old things like collapse. I do have a couple of questions. The last time we did a big bond and we did the roofs, a lot of them replaced the gutters. I don't know if they looked at our gutters, but they did not put seamless gutters up. So I'm sure it happened in the other schools too. A lot of them leak, and that erodes the sides of our buildings. Like I can see down the sides of the brick building and the pavement below. So I do think we have to, you know, make sure we're looking at some of those things, like the gutters are not in, maybe they can fix those, make them seamless. I don't know, but right now they leak through them. Also in the painting, I think we have to talk about that. I know you talked about the scope of the work, the outsides of the buildings. I know we had talked about that, but there is a lot of outside painting work. I know you're going to do a great job in the inside and kind of give it that bright look. But when people drive up, you know, there's mold on the sides of our building. There's you know, a lot of dirt on the side of our buildings. The trim around the top where the roof is, that's paint's chipping off of there. Those are things that I think could really use a look at. And I think that was it on my list. Just those things to kind of consider. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. A. Phil, you got all that? Check. All right.
Giving you more work, Phil. I'm sorry.
Rick, sorry, Rick, I don't mean to leave you out. You're taking notes too. Don, you're up.
So thank you. I had three things I wanted to talk about, and the first is I thought the town council meeting was successful, and I think Phil did a great job. But I also want to congratulate the town council for being educated and a part of this process from the very beginning. And I'm not just talking about the new members, but I mean the council in a whole, because I don't think I've been to a joint meeting where there were so many really good pointed questions from the town council. Often we present and the council is very polite and they listen and they take it all in, but that's kind of where it stops. This meeting felt so different because there was a back and forth, a lot of really good questioning and engagement. So I think it's a testament to the town council that they're engaged in this. And I congratulate them from coming to the meetings and paying attention and knowing what's going on, because I think it really makes a presentation like what Phil did even more impactful when people ask really good pointed questions. So I wanted to make sure I said that. In terms of the different projects, I'm listening to what different people are saying, and I think we have to find a way to strike a balance between the warm, safe, you know, dry kind of projects that really impact the everyday living in a building, and then the kind of projects that are exciting and take notice and make people really value this project. So if there's a way to strike balance between, you know, looking at an HVAC, which the average Joe won't really see when they walk in the building, right? We'll feel it for sure, but they won't see it, versus replacing seats in an auditorium where every single person who walks into that auditorium will notice and say, wow, that project really, had an impact on us because look at this. I think that's important. Things that they can see. And I think Jason had brought it up at one point that, when they bundled in the athletic fields into another project, it made that project way more interesting and palatable to the people in the community because they knew they were going to get something that they could use. Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think you did say that at one point. The only other thing I was going to ask is I was unable to attend the session or sessions that you had with the staff at Alan Sean Feinstein School in regards to the project scope. And I was just curious how that was received. Is there any kind of data? Is there any kind of summary or overview of how they felt, what they said, how that impacts what we've been saying, and if it impacts the direction we're going to go into in the future? That's all I have. Thanks.
Hey, Phil, you want to give a real, well, I don't know if you can give a real brief on the feedback given. Otherwise, we can talk offline. You and Don can talk.
Don, you and I certainly can talk more about it, Don, but at a high level, I could tell you that the comments that they brought to our attention during that presentation, Rick and others have incorporated those changes into the design that we have today. The design we have today is very, very similar to what you've seen before, but there have been significant changes based on comment from the educators specifically. I was very proud of my team in that we were able to have enough information that they could actually give back intelligent feedback. They quickly understood what we were trying to do. They had specific comments, and Rick was able to work them into the plan. So I feel very confident that when this package is presented back out to the community, that we will be very much aligned with the direction that the administration was going in there. And Joe, Lucian, you could also comment as well if necessary.
Maybe Phil, at a future meeting, there could be even just a laundry list of what some of those changes were. I'm just curious. I'm not questioning anything. I want the school to function for the people who work there, but I'm just curious what they said because I think it's important to know, for all of us to know what their needs and wants were, just going forward to make sure we're aware of that.
Yes, we will.
Don, that's a good point. I think it's one of the things we didn't get a report back on. I can say that I caught a portion of that meeting, and I will say there were a lot of good comments and feedback, not exactly what we expected to hear, but what we needed to hear. And I know that some of that was incorporated, but we didn't get a feedback to the building committee. So Rick and Phil, if you could go ahead and just a quick summary of what those changes were would be helpful for everyone to realize that that input was considered. I think that is a question that also comes up from the council side and others in the community as, have you received the building level input? And what was garnered out of that? And I think it's important to show people that we're listening and that we're responsive to those. Because you've met with I know that you met also with the high school recently about the science labs as well, correct? And I never got a full report back on that as well. I think, understanding what their needs were and what the report back on that may be helpful as well. So,
okay,
Alita, you're up.
Okay, same as everybody else, right? I thought it was a really good meeting. To Don's point, it did seem very interactive, and I don't know, Kim, what, if anything, hi, by the way, you feel comfortable like sharing out, but I was really wondering, like, it all felt really good, but how council received it, and do we think that, they're pretty well on board, or did everyone listen and hear well and then say, oh, 85 million, never? So I kind of was hoping what, if anything, you could share with us as far as any other discussion, and if you can't, then just say no, but I was curious.
Well, we haven't been able to discuss it as a council as a whole. What I will say though is that I know one other council member is on this committee, and two I have seen on these meetings and school committee meetings throughout the process. So while the other night we got to ask our questions, I can't say how people will vote on it, But I will say people are interested, engaged, and staying on top of this large project for our town. So I think that's all I can really say on behalf of the council, but it was a great meeting.
Sounds good. And then the only other thing that I had, and again, maybe we'll discuss and look at it more, I'm assuming before the submission, Phil. I know we've talked collectively about trying to time ourselves so that we could get 2 votes in the event the first one doesn't pass as far as bond referendums. But I thought that the last schedule kind of still had us passing and then November. And I know we talked about other key, school committee budget and things like that, timeframes to avoid. But I just want to, and again, it's just my experience and what I've seen. I'm not involved in the politics on the different levels that everyone else here is. But I thought making sure we had that 2 vote buffer was going to be very important for us, and just seeing if that's still where we're headed.
Alita, probably something we could talk offline. I want to pull you in on the schedule again. And maybe we can, if we want to grab another member of the school building committee that's interested, you, me, Phil, and that other member can revisit the schedule, lay that out and consider that on, because I know we've talked about it, but I think it's an offline discussion if that's good with you. All right, perfect. Jason Martin, you're up.
I also want to just say I've been part of the school building committee before, and we never had the engagement that I saw from the town council last time. So it was really something that I wasn't used to seeing, and I just had a great feel about it. I also want to thank Phil and his team. Obviously, we converse back and forth, and I could throw stuff at him all day and say, okay, let's do this, let's do that. He's really good at, focusing me and taking what I say and bringing it down to the level. We could have meeting after meeting, and we could come up with just an endless list of things that we would benefit from having done. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a balance of getting things that have to get done, but also getting things that are going to interest the taxpayers enough to come out and help us get this passed. And that was the struggle that we had. When you do roofs and boilers, they're not sexy. But when you do a field, that's sexy to people. They like that. So I think we're on a good track, and I'm really optimistic on how this is going to go.
Thanks, Jason. And I've heard you've been a rock star. Phil talks very highly of you, and I know he's thrown a lot at you, so you've taken it very well, so we appreciate it. Mr. Lucian, I see you're on the line. Maybe. Joe, you there? We'll hold that thought till later, I guess. Am I the only one not hearing anything, or? Okay. All right. So we'll bypass. I think I've hit everyone on the committee. Oh, actually, Craig, did you get a chance to speak?
No, but I agree with everything everybody said. I think it was phenomenal. And I really, to me, just the level of engagement too, and, with the committee, with the council and I go by the questions that are being asked. And I thought they were poignant questions, very supportive of the process. And, I think Don made a lot of good points about, just looking at, when you talked about the input that the middle school had. I think, we have representation of Amy, who represents, her school, but also at an elementary level. But I thought, and I might have shared at a meeting before, I know Dr. Dixon had talked about the high school, and it was, good to hear, Phil, you're meeting with them. But if there's a way to get that same level of input, obviously the amount of money we're spending at the elementary schools is much less, but it seems like that process really got some really good buy-in from our internal stakeholders. And if there was a way to do that, I know we don't have a lot of time, but if there's a way to do that with the other elementary schools, I think that might be, nice approach, but again, timing is everything. So, but I thought you guys were phenomenal. And I just wanted to say thank you again for all the work. And the committee, I meant it when I said we have such an outstanding committee. You know, when you look around, I look here at the tiles and see the expertise and the institutional knowledge we have. I think we're very fortunate. So I just want to reiterate and thank everybody. You know, I'm like the true figurehead here, and everybody else has all the, you know, the input. And you guys, it's many of you have children, and it's just really good to see. So thank you.
Thanks, Craig. John, you had your hand up. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. I was listening to everybody, and I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask it, but it was specific. Phil, I just had a quick question about the estimates that you're using. I've seen since the pandemics has started that raw material costs or material costs have escalated quite a bit. In my business, structural steel has gone up over 100% in the last 6 months. What have you built into the estimate, or what's your philosophy on what the escalation is going to be like within the next year or two by the time these projects actually come to fruition?
So the estimating is done by an independent cost estimator that we bring on board. We're bringing on board a group out of Massachusetts whom we've used before, PM&C. They will estimate escalation
Phil?
to the,
I'm
yes,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't know if anybody else is having a hard time hearing, but I'm having a hard time hearing you. Could you please move your microphone?
is that any better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. The cost estimating is done by a third-party independent consultant that we bring on board. We're bringing on board a group out of Massachusetts called PM&C. We've worked with them before. They will estimate escalation in the project to midpoint of construction based on the schedule that we give them over the next 5 years for the projects. It will be based on the schedule that we have presented preliminarily to you all. And I have confidence in that they're estimating it appropriately given their level of expertise and the service that they provide.
Okay.
Alita and Christine may be able to also comment on how they think the costing is right now. I don't know. What do you guys think? What have you seen?
I've had the good fortune, we're on a job where we kind of locked in a lot of our contracts as COVID was approaching. So we were able to build in some, I just want to say maybe some security for our owner on the particular project. But in reaching out to our estimators across the board, they're definitely seeing things going up right now, trending up. And they haven't really been comfortable making a projection for when they think they're going to see them trend down. So, I mean, they're probably in the same boat, same type of, I'm sure it's the same industry alignment with wherever PMC is going to take it. They'll set a standard. They have the publications that people will go by to hopefully try to make sure we're looking at the right numbers as we're going in now. But I haven't bought out anything, so I kind of got locked in before, and I'm just starting to see smaller impacts.
I'm in the same boat. Our project was locked in prior to COVID, so I haven't personally had to deal with any of those increases, but I agree with all the things that Alita said. Everything's definitely trending up, and everything's coming a lot slower too.
I can say that I deal with developers on a daily basis, and in John's business, similar RIDOT. I deal with a lot of people from RIDOT, and cost of steel is just even such things as traffic light stanchions have escalated substantially. My hope would be that after COVID calms down and supply chain renormalizes, that our hope is that we miss the bubble. It's the bottom line. Hopefully by this thing gets baked out in a year or two, by the time we're ordering raw materials, we get there, that things will de-escalate a little bit. Uh,
I think will benefit. I think people will be hungry. I think we've had some delays and cancellations of projects and work due to COVID. So we look like we'd be gearing up right around the time when people, maybe trying to fill their queue back up. So we may get the benefit of a market that's, trying to get back ramped up and get some competitive pricing so that, they can just line up the work. So timing looks good on that front, but
good point.
day by day.
Ms.
Thank you.
Volusian, did you have your hand up?
Hey, Luke, can you hear me now or no?
I can.
Okay, I apologize. I just was at school. The Wi-Fi wasn't working. I went on the phone. I ran home, and then all of a sudden I couldn't talk. I unmuted myself, and it just wasn't talking. So I just signed on a couple times. Just very quickly, Phil and Don. I know I texted Don already. I have a document that my teachers made that have all of the requests or questions or things like that that they asked after they met with everybody. So I'm going to share that with Don and Phil and you, Luke, so that you have it. At the bottom, it has all the tabs on it from each different department, just some of the things that they went over that they questioned, and they just kind of got back and put it on the document just to give you a little bit about what they were thinking and what they were asking for. And, so you have a little bit more information. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that also.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. So if you could transmit that tomorrow, sometime soon, we can take a look and go over it. All right, anything else on that particular topic? That was the 75%. I will open it up to the public. If the public has any questions on this particular topic or any input on the 75% presentation, because we do have a few attendees here. So if anybody would like to raise their hand from the public, feel free to do so. Going once, going twice, 3 times, and nothing. So we'll move on our agenda topics unless anybody has anything else. I see no hands. We're good. Thanks for all your input. I appreciate your patience. I do like to take time to go through, as you know, each person, because I want to give everyone an opportunity and kind of force them to talk. Because I know these meetings can go long and people don't feel like they have a chance to actually put their input in. So Phil, I'm going to go on to the next item, which is critical items for stage 2 submission. This ball is in your court. You had mentioned the resolutions earlier. Can you debrief us on what you need?
Sure. Thank you, Luke. There are a series of resolutions and policies that the school department is required to have in place as they move forward with a project and a stage 2 submission. There are 4 or 5 of them. I have emailed examples to Luke, and typically those resolutions are either made or affirmed or confirmed around the end of January, beginning of February, prior to our February 15th submission. So I would respectfully ask that you go through those as a school committee with your school committee and have those votes in place before February 15th. If you have any particular questions, I'd be happy to help. But I did provide some samples to Luke.
And Phil, you mentioned in your email, so compliance with New England CHIPS protocols, resolution certifying compliance with tools for schools, policy adopted with regards to Energy Star, and a resolution with regards to certifying compliance with motor vehicle idling, which I'm assuming is with regards to the buses.
Correct.
So those are things, Kathy, specifically, I will have to get with you on. We will have to figure out what policies are in place and what will need to be adopted for the stage 2. Don.
Are those policies, do they need to be done before submission or before we start the work?
I believe those policies need to be adopted prior to submission.
So we're going to have to be pretty tight with our meeting timeline because each policy takes 2 readings.
we're gonna have to lay that out pretty quickly, Kathy. See what we need to do. I don't know if we have anything in place on some of this.
Hey, Luke, I actually think from the last building committee that some of that stuff was already in place. I
Okay.
don't know how to find that, but I feel like some of that stuff has already been, is already in existence.
All right.
Can you share them with me, Luke, Phil? So I'm on the policy subcommittee. I can take a look and see. Like I said, a resolution is one thing, but a policy, Don's right. If it's a policy we don't have, it takes 2 meetings. If it's a revision, we can probably do it in a meeting, but
Yeah, and the way you put it is a resolution and or policy and or renewed respectively. So we'll have to look at what we have.
Right.
And what we need to
right.
do.
But a resolution we could do in a meeting.
Right.
So, but we only have potentially 2 meetings before the 15th that we could put them on. So I'll need to get that information as soon as I can. You'd share it.
I just sent it to you.
All right, thank you.
You should have it. We'll work it out. If that's our largest hurdle, we're doing okay. We'll make it through. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and make no mistake, we will submit on February 15th.
Yeah.
Period.
So we'll get it done. And even if we had to do a follow-on, I'm sure RIDE will work with us on amending the package accordingly. So we'll make it happen. All right, anything else, Phil, on critical items?
No, that's all.
Okay, excellent. So then I will move on. So discussion of the project website. So I mentioned earlier, I had a brief meeting with School Point, which is our vendor who's going to be doing our website development. I had asked Phil, if Phil had said in that meeting that he would create a few thoughts and ideas on what that site might look like. Phil, did you bring any of that tonight?
Sure, I have some information to share. It is not as developed as some of my previous presentations, but it is something that I am interested in helping you with. But I would like to share some of my thoughts because I think going forward, we all want to be singing from the same sheet of music, and the information that we are going to place on the website should be agreed upon by you all and contain the information that you want to start communicating now and as you start approaching the bond. So I have a couple slides with just some information. I'd like to go through them and maybe just gather some feedback. But again, I apologize. This is not as polished as some of our other work, but it's really just intended to generate some thoughts. Okay. Do you see that slide?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of the things to start with is, what is the message going to be when someone clicks on this particular part of the website? When you direct somebody there, what are they going to see? I believe it has to have a title that catches someone's attention. These may be extreme statements, but building for our students' future, or building for our children's future. Our school buildings are not making the grade. I think it's important that you continue to address the issues that school facilities have a direct impact on student and staff health, academic achievement, environmental impact, and property values. This is an image that was for another school community on something else, but can you imagine the recognizing the COVID and the pandemic that we're in, but recognizing an image or some kind of visual that has every elementary school student that is in, I'll say, second or third grade. And those students, every one of them would be the first ones impacted by this middle school project. All right, that visual of almost every student in Coventry in second or third grade would be powerful. They obviously have a voice. They may not know how to communicate it, but we know that where they learn matters. This is a graphic that I found that I'd like to work with my group and sort of enhance. But there's a couple things that you want to start communicating. It's not difficult to communicate the need of this work. I'm sure everyone would agree that the need is there. But the reason for doing it, why now, why this needs to be addressed. You need to remind people that, for example, in that first statement, education for the future, that new facilities enhance both K-12 and community educational programming and enhance the safety and security of students and staff, that there's economic growth from having strong school facilities that increase property values and attract other business. And it helps stabilize the community when their facilities are state of the art, when they have amenities that the community can use. It helps retain staff, retain students, retain residents, and these schools become magnets. Why somebody would want to move to Coventry is because of the schools should be one of those top reasons. Another image I came across that is really important is that I believe very strongly you need to make a connection between the residents. Mrs. A, you mentioned not only are you teachers in the community, but you're also parents in the community, and you need to let those people who maybe don't have children that you need their help to invest in their future and in their community. And you need to make that visual connection between the need and that it's actually impacting students and staff and local residents. A couple statements that we want to keep in mind, and I guess I want to say all of this to you and present this information so we can help maybe have a discussion about what this website looks like, right? Better schools increase property values. Businesses are more likely to invest in communities with strong schools, right? The communities can use school facilities. I think introducing this idea of a field is a great idea. I'm really thrilled that we're going to be able to put that on there, included as part of the package. And who knows, that may be the one thing that someone is looking for to vote yes. And, you know, the communities are responsible for funding these schools. And it's up to the communities to decide how they want to spend their money and where that investment is going to be. A couple things. We know that modernization of schools improves the students' and teachers' health, right? It promotes engagement in the learning environment. People are going to so want to come back to school when we can and engage in the process that we've all been through and realize now that we need it more than any. I have 3 kids, and my youngest, my youngest Vinny is a wild card. He wants to go back to school, and he needs to be back in school, and many students do. Good facilities attract and retain high quality teachers. One of the things that we talked about with RIDE in the SBA was they had asked, did you look at investing in the elementary schools now? And we understand the elementary schools need attention. We know that there may be a future plan many years from now. But one thing that we did say is that the strength of Coventry elementary schools has a lot to do with the staff and the teachers and their dedication and the community and family feel of those schools. And it is because of them that they're able to compensate for some of the shortcomings in the facilities. Those shortcomings need to be addressed. But thankfully at the elementary schools, the quality of the staff helps compensate for that. And we know that it is good for community, and increasing property values and engaging community taxpayer support is necessary for any school construction going forward. The last thing on here is just a couple little bubbles here, but as we start thinking about this website, what information do we want people to access and what will engage them? We know that there will be the stage 1, the stage 2, all the meetings and presentations that have been recorded. And that's great archival information. And there may be those people that want to look at every one of those documents, but that's not really what's going to engage somebody to go out and vote yes and participate and be involved. They're going to want to know, what are the highlights? What are some frequently asked questions? You know, why are we doing this now? Maybe it's important to remind them, you know, where we are. If you remember in some of the presentations, we showed some images of facilities of where you are and where you probably want to be. Maybe not everybody is aware. You know, it's almost as simple as addressing, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Where are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And how much is it going to cost me? So, Luke, I'm afraid that's really all I was able to put together. I'm anxious to do as much as we can to help. But I really think it's a discussion amongst this group on their ideas on how to engage and what the residents and the community members are going to be looking for.
Bill, I think it was just right. I didn't expect you to, I actually didn't want you to come up with more than that, because I want this group to drive the process. So, you know, not necessarily just coming from you. So I think it's great. You just had some high level stuff. I'll preface the input with just saying, we're pivoting, right? Where our input in the building process is slowly diminishing, because we need to submit the report and we're getting into nuts and bolts. So then what is the school building committee role? I think for the next few months, we've talked at length ad nauseum previously in the process about how do we approach communication and who's going to take it on. Well, we have a building committee here that is going to be underutilized. So it'd probably behoove us to tap many of you, as Christine had aptly noted earlier, to help with this process and really start pivoting into the communication aspect. My own feedback is my goal is to ensure that we're providing as a group accurate information to the community. The project, I think, ultimately will sell itself if we provide good, accurate information. What I'd hate to happen is we get tainted on putting something out there that seems a bit too slanted or a little bit too much promotional. So while we want to promote, we want to temper that with the feeling of there may be some in the community who try to call us to task on some of the numbers, some of the data that we provide. We want to make sure it's clear and accurate. So with that, I'll leave it to the group. I mean, does anybody want to provide input on what they think they should see when they open up a website and how this looks and feels? Don, you're up.
Just to kind of put some additional context behind this, because I was part of that meeting and I was also part of the original meeting where we selected this group to help us with the website. And I think it's important for everybody here to know the opportunity we have to be very robust and very engaging and very interactive versus the way our website is now. And it's no one person's fault. Our website is just not built the way that it should be for this kind of project. So, you know, we absolutely could embed photos and videos and links to different things that people can go to, and that would all be right on that landing page. We can have photos scroll through. So it's going to be way more than just a page with hyperlinks to other pages, which can be a little bit boring, because once people have to start clicking 1, 2, 3, 4 times, you're going to lose them. Whereas this page is going to have a lot of it right front and center. And then the other thing I was going to say is when we met with the developers, they will help us develop it, but then 1 or 2 of us will have the permissions to load information onto that website. And being the guy on the school department side that pretty much does that, I do Twitter, I do Facebook, I do Instagram, I send out most of the school messenger messages. It really probably would be very consistent and easy for me to be the person to upload information, or Jim Murphy onto the to the site. So I'm happy to be part of a group, because I think I'd like to contribute, but I can also probably be the person who ultimately ends up putting things where they need to be.
Thanks, Don. And I'll bring up in a minute, looking at samples of School Point site, but one of their site typically looks like. Anybody else want to provide some input? Alita?
I think it would be nice, I don't know, I feel strongly about it sometimes, kind of like a tagline or slogan or something that goes along with the construction and or like a logo. I know you guys had talked about maybe taking this opportunity to get, I personally was not as offended by the tree as some people I've heard don't like this, the tree with the C, but I don't know, but I don't know if this would be a good opportunity, even if they're redoing that all for the town separately and we take that new logo and bring it through, that's great. But something that, I don't know, something that's a little quick hitter, cute, something that resonates, something that you can see and talk to with people. I don't know how necessary people feel that is, but that's what I've seen on some of these publicity campaigns, like a quick little tagline or slogan or something that people can latch onto.
Thanks, Alita. Anybody else? Christine?
I think for a website, I want to see a lot of information delivered in a concise, quick way. Like I'm thinking of like other bond votes that I might have read, or, you know, questions on a ballot or something. I need the most impact that you can give me for a reason on why I should vote yes for this. And I think if we put too many words on a page, you're going to lose people with that. Like, photos are huge if you can show them why you need it. I mean, Amy, if you could get up there and just tell them how bad things are, and like, I would give you the world.
It's a good point. I'm a big fan of icons. So like, you know, little icons with a very short tagline. You know, what does it mean? How much money? Where's it going? Because most of us don't click past the first page, to be honest. I don't, you know, like, and a lot of it's on phone now. So people are flipping through. So the more impactful it can be to convey the initial information, and then maybe dig down deeper if you want to get deeper into the weeds. But certainly a good point.
I think Phil's Hive, right? That high visual impact, right? If you can just kind of have that right away, like this is what we're proposing, and, you know, like here's your before, here's your after. You know, I remember that video that they put out for the police station, right? I mean, they were standing in like the bowels of their basement with the mold around them. And I mean, that had a huge impact. Like, you know, why should I give you a new police station? And, oh, well, I can see what you're breathing in right now. And I think right now too, we have that unique opportunity with COVID. I think a lot of people know a lot more about HVAC now than they ever did. So I think you can sell some of those points quickly.
Yeah.
Good point.
And I think another thing that should be a quick hitter somehow is when we get that how much per year type of deal for as little as $2 per day, you know, and maybe that's a graphical image that starts with what you have, what you can have for as little as per year per taxpayer, and, you know, break it down to per day if it sounds, you know, reasonable and it's like $2 or something, but just somehow that's a big part of the splash for what it is. Here's what you can get and what it will, you know, will cost so little, and some graphic that kind of ties that in right up front.
And Alita, you bring up a great point, because a lot of people are willing to fund something if they know exactly what it's going towards and what they're going to get for it. And I think that's why so many organizations struggle when they look for whether stewardship at a church or getting a budget passed in a town, where people are asked to, you know, have their taxes raised or to contribute, but then they don't really know and they can't see the impact that it has. This is a different kind of project. And I think to be able to have people see where it's going and what it's going to produce is very, very, very strong. And I think we'd be missing an excellent opportunity to make that point if that wasn't included with what you just said in our website.
Good point, Don. Others, Kathy, and then Ms. Shockley.
The only piece I don't want us, any of us, to forget is to try to utilize our students in some of those photos and videos, because the student impact, a high school student or an elementary, you know, middle school student who actually wants to say why they need a new school, or why they need it to look better. I know that the last bond that we passed that included the fields, you know, there was the, you know, the company that came and did some of the graphics and did the poster boards to leave at like town hall, at the different schools. So during, you know, when people came to the schools, obviously we're in COVID right now, they could actually see what we were going to do. And along with that were the students who actually came to school committee meetings with photos. There was photos of, you know, the leaks at the high school and why, you know, why we needed a new roof. That was hugely impactful to this community to have the student voice. So I just hope that we don't forget that student voice. I think we do have kids that could do some leadership, maybe videos or whatever. But that was just my only thing. Otherwise, I think everybody said really great things about what we need to do.
Ms. Shockley.
Thank you. You know, I'm glad that we're putting this website together. It sounds like people are going to have a lot of great ideas for it, but how are we promoting it? You know, it's one thing, the schools listserv gets the parents, but they're kind of the low hanging fruit here. You know, my kids won't go to this school, but I see why we need it because I'm right there in the Big Muddy. So, you know, for those of us who are planting a seed for a tree our child will never sit underneath. And then for those who maybe never raised their children in this community, like how are we pushing this out to the rest of the town beyond just the current parents?
You're ahead of your time. So this is what I wanted to accomplish tonight is set the seed, right? The website is one piece of a much larger strategy, right? It's a piece of a mechanism. The reason I brought it up tonight was because it's in motion. So I wanted to vet out some initial ideas for the website. So when Phil kind of goes back and we meet with School Point again, that we can come up with a rough framework that we can evaluate. So what I would expect by our next meeting is that we have kind of a templated page that we can start moving the blocks and thinking about it. Along with that, we've talked about this very early in the process. We had a sketch session, which I promise you, I'm going to synthesize into a document that has all the ideas that we had. But Don had brought this up about demographic groups, different groups. So we have the parents, we have older people in the community, we have people who are like the townies, we have business leaders, we have all these subgroups in town that we need to target. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to have to figure out how we slice each piece of that pie. And a couple of you are probably going to tag team, like the buddy system, to focus on each one of those areas. So I haven't really dropped this fully on you yet, but what I anticipate happening over the next couple of months is we'll have the ability to kind of work as subgroups to bake up strategies in each of these areas and then combine them, which would then feed into the framework of the website and sort of promotion. And Kim, you're absolutely right. You can have a website sit somewhere and never get looked at. It can be the most beautiful site in the world, but we're going to have to figure out, and I think it's going to be a different meeting, specifically focused on promotion. Like, are we putting flyers out in businesses? Are we trying to drive traffic through social media and maybe paid distribution? Are we trying to, there's a million ways to do it, just doing it. So I wanted to interject that because I don't want people to feel like this is the website meeting. It's not. This is the initial seeds to let the web designer kind of start designing and ensure that we're incorporating some of your initial feedback. So I saw a hand up. Who was next? Don, you're up.
I just wanted to add one last thing before I lose track is one of the things that's going to be part of this website initiative is an app for our school department and the website. So he's going to build out an app that will be available in Apple and Android. And when we update our website with news or photos or whatever it is that we decide to do, he'll be able to create a notification that will get pushed through the app. So I think a leader, somebody had mentioned, most everybody is going to be viewing this through their phone. And for some people, they may not view it at all, but if they have the app and get a notification, it may prompt them to go into it. So that doesn't solve all our problems, but I didn't want to forget to mention that.
Thanks, Don. And that's an important point. He did bring that up in our meeting, and as I say, there's an app for that. So
I think maybe something worth noting too, I'm still kind of old school. I legit read the reminder when it shows up. And that might be a way to target some people who will never open an app or a computer screen, something that we can translate to a print ad that has that same little graphic and maybe different talking points. Because if you're talking to a newspaper reading audience, then maybe it's not the same, points that you want to get across on the website thing, but just something to consider, that we do have the paper that I think most people get. And I read just because I miss having a newspaper to read, honestly.
And Alita, that's not very expensive. We run ads in that every year for kindergarten registration, pretty good size ads for a number of weeks in a row. And that's not a huge lift.
we'll certainly have to talk about that. Lee, you've been strangely silent. You have anything to contribute? And you got to take yourself off mute or I can't hear you.
I saw that presentation and I was pretty excited by what he had to offer. Even if he can get part of that website up for you, it would be a huge improvements. So I'm very hopeful that the website is going to do a lot for us. I like Kathy's idea of including the students, everybody's ideas about staying in contact with other members of the community. This middle school project is extremely important for Coventry. And as well as, the other school repairs and upgrades. So the sooner we can get that website in whatever fashion involved, the better it's going to be. That's all I have.
And just so you know, on schedule, I did put out an initial schedule. I kind of pushed and said, I'd like to have something by the end of the month. That's going to be an aggressive schedule. But my real hope is that within the next month and a half, by the time we get the stage 2 issued, I'd like to have something up and running. We can always tweak it. We can always add to it and develop it, but I want to get something really going. So when we hit the stage 2, we have something pushed out with some information that we can refer to. I see some hands up, Jason Martin and then John. So Jason.
Luke, I just wanted to kind of echo what Kathy Patnode was saying. Back when that other bond was passed, not the chairperson, school committee member Nancy Springelmeyer really did a lot of work as far as gathering student groups with, feet on the ground, whether it's the basketball association, whether it's the lacrosse team at the high school, whatever those groups happen to be, Nancy really rallied them all and made it like personal and was able to put, when you talk about the lacrosse field, that here's the lacrosse team, or when you talk about the chairs in the auditorium, here's the drama club. So I think that kind of involvement with all the groups can't be underestimated. And we definitely did run huge ads in the reminder, and they worked with us because it was good for them too. So that was all I wanted to mention.
Thanks, Jason. And, keeping in mind, most of us are, well, a lot of us are parents. We're engaged in sports or other community activities. We're also the facilitators, and we need to remind ourselves. I think even me, remind myself when I meet with other people saying, oh, by the way, I'm part of this effort. Did you know about X? And it's sometimes just difficult to do. We're all busy, but just realizing that we're all part of this. John, where'd you go?
Just thought maybe it might be a good idea to make the website a little bit interactive, maybe some contests. So when we have some sort of decision that we need to make that we want community input for, and put a little interactiveness in it where the community's got to go on and check whether they like X, Y, or Z better or something like that.
That's an interesting concept, John. I think keeping a site fresh and maybe having something that Kim mentioned driving people to the site. The key is how do you engage and keep them there to kind of click through. So I'll have to give that some thought. I understand your premise though. Joe Lucian.
Look, I just I wanted to say I think people are on target, because I think having a very good website is important, but that doesn't hit everybody. That is a great secondary resource for people to go to. We need to do things like, just like you said, the reminder, the newspaper, try to get stuff, radio, signs work real well when you need to get it, but just signs that say, go here for this information, so that people, get that. I also know that it's not through the like CBS or NBC, but when you go to like local news stations like Cox Communication, like the people on that end, Comcast, they have where you could run ads on like TV for like a lot cheaper than what it would be like if you go on like an NBC in between like shows or things like that, just because there's a huge audience that still don't go on the internet, that don't that's not their main resource, and that's most of the people that we have that are voting, that end up voting in this town. And that's something that we just always got to remember, to try to hit it multiple avenues so that everybody gets this information out and they understand why. And then having that website as a secondary resource where they could go to get more information.
Thanks, Joe. It's a good point. Does anybody else have anything? Lita?
I know, I'm sorry, but I just keep thinking of random things, we could do for flyers and things that we put up places, like even at billboards where you're waiting to pick up like pizza or something. Like now what we do a lot at like my job site, you can make the QR code scan things, and everybody's smartphone has the camera. So you can say, hey, information, here's the flyer, scan here, and then you hit it, and then you get this flashy image as well. So you don't have to necessarily go to a website, do too much clicking around. You literally put your phone up to it, hit it, and then it'll give you the quick one-pager blurb on the new construction and blah, blah, blah. And that could be on flyers and things that are in the schools and just anywhere that, we get a heavy population of people where you go to sign up for stuff, just library, bulletin boards, just, I don't know, just maybe just another thing in the communications piece.
Thank you. And Dot had mentioned something during our earlier process about creating culture and hitting people where they live every day. So we're a service-based community. So, we can focus on different demographics, but we all get a pizza, right? We all go to, we all want to try T-Bones, the new restaurant in town. We all want to, we do our shopping at Dave's. The business community, I think, is going to be key. I'm very interested in taking that piece of this pie on for myself and others who want to join me. Because I think that if you were to get a takeout menu and have something about Coventry schools on that takeout menu or with that takeout menu, you've got it in somebody's face. If you go to Dave's Market and you get some piece of paperwork at the register, we all shop in the community, we all engage in the community. So I think that is a very good way to engage as a primary resource to divert people to the site. So, Kim.
Just as far as places, and I don't know if the local churches are like this, but the church that I used to go to had a bulletin, and it would have information about the community that people could send in, or, churches might be willing to put some information or a QR code. And when you're sitting and waiting for church to start, sometimes you look at your phone a little bit. So it could be a place where a lot of different populations go, and they could have the time to get something up on their phone.
So you're telling us you look at your phone in church? Is that what you... Just kidding. No, it's great input. And it's along those same lines, where people are gathering, engaging in community events is perfect. Anybody else at this point? Rob, you're up.
This is actually for Don. So Don, when you send an email out that goes school-wide, what's the chances of when this website develops that you just kind of put it on there? Like, you sent an email out recently about the children going back to school. Why can't we just put that on there? Say, just as at the bottom, say, and be sure to check out our new website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can absolutely do a number of things. We can do a targeted email campaign just on the website itself, just to drive people to the location. But we can also add a banner to the bottom of our email so that every email that goes out has a piece on the bottom just to remind people of going there.
Yeah.
So the plus side is that gets everybody on the school side. The downside is it does not get the municipal people who don't have kids in school. So
No,
the town could use, maybe, I don't know, Code Red or whatever system they have for communicating with everyone. To be honest with you, sometimes I get better saturation through Facebook, because if something gets shared multiple times, it could be viewed sometimes 3,000 or 4,000 times. So I shared the school lunch menu yesterday on our Facebook page, and it's been seen almost 3,000 times, and that's just a school lunch menu. So if it catches people's attention and they share it, which actually brings up another point, Rob, that sometimes we don't take advantage of, is using our people as our partners and saying to our staff and our community supporters that when something gets sent out through social media, to share it and reshare it so that other people can see it, because their network is going to be much larger than ours.
And Don, the messenger that you send out, that if we don't check off that we want it to just to go to guardians, it can be sent to every contact on every student's sheet. So grandparents, aunts, uncles, we can send it out to everybody that a parent puts on there as their contact.
Yeah. We usually don't do that because we don't want to fill up boxes, but if we have a message like this, we absolutely can do that.
Good input. All right, we're at the 8 o'clock hour. We're not going to resolve everything tonight. I try to stick, as you know, to the 2 hours, because I know we all work for a living and we have many other obligations. So I want to assure everybody that this is the first of our pivot to a communications conversation. So what you'll likely see come up more and more on the agenda is more about communications and community outreach, with a very small component of critical items that Phil needs to fulfill the stage 2. Once stage 2 goes in, we'll continue to have these meetings. I know you all love them. I hate to take them away from you. So I will ensure that your schedule is well filled with meetings that we can discuss. But I want to get more strategic. So everything we talked about tonight has to have an outcome. So every meeting will be pointed to come out with some achievable goal so we can actually produce results. So things like, maybe it's one meeting we're just talking about, we talked about the business strategy or outreach beyond the website. Then what does that take the form of, and what is the outcome, and what is the producible goal, and who's going to do it? I encourage you all to step up. I know you have many obligations. I've tried to take the nuts and bolts of this process as far as I can do it, but it's all of our lift, and including anybody that would be interested from the outside that you may know who want to engage in a piece of this communications effort. So if you happen to know people in the community, Don, you've kind of been working on identifying some people who might be good fits. But we need to extend our reach beyond the building committee, because the more infiltration we get into our community partners, the better off we're going to be as this proceeds to a bond vote.
Yeah, and not to go down the rabbit hole, but we also talked about forming a parent group may form in the community to help support this, in a PAC type format. So that's something we should probably talk about at some point as well, if that all comes to be.
It is, and the part of the reason I'm doing this because we're organized right now, right? We have a great potential. We have an enormous amount of resources on the building committee now, so we can get this launched and continue with our meetings and have an organized effort. But that doesn't preclude getting outside partners involved in this, because I think it's ultimately important that we get those community partners in. But I know we had talked about trying to get a new person in the community to maybe lead an effort. And to be honest with you, it's like a whole nother thing, right? So I think starting here and then spidering out might be a better way to keep it under control and organized and manageable. So unless anybody has any adversity or has a different opinion or As you know, I'm always open to thoughts and opinions. So.
The other thing, Luke, I was going to say, and then I'll stop talking, is maybe we should pivot to a subcommittee format where we have subcommittees who are doing the work, and then really these meetings are just opportunities for subcommittees to report back out.
And that's a great point. And what I referred to earlier is about maybe having small groups. So I'm going to send out an email of some, based on our earlier assessment, of some areas that may be of interest to people as far as subcommittee groups. And I'm hoping that you'll all get back to me on things that might interest you. And so we can start breaking those down. And I think it's a good idea, Don, maybe use this as a report back group, larger big picture, but then we kind of break out into those subgroups to figure out the details. All right, does anybody have anything else on that topic before we move on to next meeting? Anybody? Okay, perfect. Great conversation. So we are at the 12th. Excuse me while I pull up the schedule and see where we're supposed to be. We had we're a little off because I think we're originally starting to get into the joint school council meeting. So we're off. Let me say this, I would be looking to shoot for another meeting on the 26th to keep to the Tuesday. Is anybody opposed to the 26th at 6 p.m.? So that will be scheduled as our next meeting. That will bring us past my next update to council. We'll be a little further in the process and we'll be a week before the council vote, hopefully. In the meantime, there's a lot of work to be done on all sides and we'll make sure we track on that. And as you know, I'll keep the group involved with any distribution emails or things that need to go out. Did anyone have anything on that? I'm just, I know we're getting tired. All right, so that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I will.
I have just a question. So if we are, what's the order of the vote? Do we need to, I mean, I know it's just a formality, but do we need to vote to, submit the stage 2? Like, do we need to review it? Does that need to happen before council votes? Do we need to go in and say it's been approved by school and building? What's the order of operations for that? I mean, I think we're all gonna vote yes, right? But what's the, the formalities of how that needs to happen? Can you maybe dig into that to make sure we have a meeting schedule that's accurate?
That right now, no, because
Okay.
I think that's going to be the scheduling meeting. That's going to happen very, very quickly. Because Phil, that is one thing I'm realizing because we not only have these resolutions, but we have to get votes from the school committee, town council, and all of this stuff lined up. And I'm looking at, we're at the 12th.
So it's going to happen on the 28th. I think we're going to have to do all that with the school committee on the 28th, and then the following town council meeting, so that we can submit on the 15th.
Right.
And
So-
typically the school building committee makes a recommendation to the school committee. Now, it is not uncommon for all of these to happen at like 1 or 2 days, right immediately after each other.
So the way it's looking to shape up will be the 26th, the 28th, and the 1st. So we'll have building committee, school committee, and council. So we had talked about draft report. And Phil, when can we expect a digital copy distribution of what you have?
So we can set that up as soon as you want it. So, I mean, I will tell you, we have done this many, many times, and never is it entirely completed as we go through any of these approvals, only because of the sheer volume of assembling all of this. And we will certainly make a PDF file for you to review. It'll probably be several hundred pages long. What you are simply approving is that, yes, we want to make this submission for about whatever it is, $85 million to these 6 schools for this scope of work. And even then, the motion is just to approve the submission of the stage 2. We never go into saying exactly all the details of that. So when you want something, we will give you whatever we have right up to the last minute so that you can submit it.
If I may, I think the only thing, if it's a matter of that, not just, you know, Phil, not to just exercise you guys to put something together, like reading the policies and things like that, that I don't think anyone's interested, but I think kind of like what we were talking about today, maybe just a quick review of where the scope stands. So like potentially how Kathy threw in the chairs and, you know, they wanted to double check that the well was in Western, and a couple changes from, just so that everyone sees mainly the scope. So if there's any other ideas, we could just talk about real quick. And then if we want to just, you know, give ourselves some room to be able to add something else, whether it's just by adding a simple sentence or something. I really think that's the real meat that anybody would really want to just say yay or nay to prior, if my thoughts. But like, I just don't want to have you trying to put everything together just for the sake of saying, hey, here's a draft with all these sections that, you know, we're not really gonna comment or change. But
Let me ask Councilor Shockley, from your aspect, what you think from the council standpoint, you would think you'd like to see.
Well, I think one important note that people have mentioned tonight is that we are voting to move forward, you know, just to get to the next step. So I think that's an important thing to note at this point in the process. You know, I can say from my perspective, you know, I don't recall, but I would look back at the questions that were asked. Everyone tonight seems to have felt the meeting was really proactive and that good questions were asked. And I would make sure that if there was something that wasn't answered there, you're moving forward, you're going to have an answer when you come before us again, or send something out before that meeting to the council. You know, everyone asked good questions. If they haven't, you know, maybe even give them one more opportunity to reach out to you if anything else occurred to them outside of the meeting.
Okay.
And get those questions answered at the meeting, just so people are all moving forward knowing, you know, they asked everything they could think of and that they feel positive about the project.
And I think, Alita, you make a good point. You know, the chances of somebody going through the hundreds of pages and scrubbing this with a fine tooth comb, nor is it everyone's job necessarily to do so. We have a team to do this. But hitting the high points and making sure that we're on target, where, you know, Ride's gonna thoroughly review this as well. And this is non-committal on the town's part. This is just to get to the next level, which is the reimbursement. So Phil, I would ask that by the 19th, which is a week before our meeting, that we have kind of a high point list of things, scope included, of all the different projects at the schools. And hopefully by that point, I've had a time to talk to Steve Massaroni and the town manager to wring out some of the financials. Because that's going to be coming up as questions too, is, you know, what does this look like? Whether we're voting on it or not, this is going to be starting to be part of the discussion, especially at these next meetings coming up at the end of the month. So let's shoot for the 19th. We can always do an update the following week too, if we have additional input. Does that sound good to you? Craig.
Yeah, I just want to go back to like when stage 1 was approved. And I know it's a completely different council, but it's the same school committee that I think, Phil, you had given like a overview of each of the sections to explain what was within each section. I know with the school committee, because I don't think they saw the, you know, whatever is 500 and some odd pages, but you gave an overview of each section and then you explained, I think, very concisely and very particularly in terms of what exactly they were approving. And I think that's, I just don't, because our timeline is so tight, I don't want to open the door to have to, you know, to not be able to approve. And so I'm just going back to the stage 1. I think, again, you went over all the sections and then explained exactly what the school committee members and the town council members were approving. So I don't know if that helps, but that was kind of the process we followed for stage one.
Phil, is that doable?
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
You know what I like about Phil? He is one cool cookie. I could say, I need you to build a rocket ship next week. He'd be like, yeah,
So
that's
can I-
fine.
can
Just
I
tell me
tell
when
you-
you need it, no problem.
Can I tell you one quick story? This will only take a minute, I promise. We were working for a school district. They were starting a major capital campaign. Turned out to be a very good friend of mine. He says, Phil, I have this idea. I want to take the whole school district and we want to create the tallest Lego tower and hold the Guinness World Record. Can you do that? I said, oh, sure, no problem. So you could look it up. It's the Red Clay Consolidated School District in Delaware. We held the record for a couple of years. It was the first world record tallest Lego tower that was not funded by Lego company itself. In fact, when they heard that we were going to do this, they disassociated themselves with it until we did it. We got the record and we held it for a couple of years until Lego did it again somewhere in another country. But when he told me, I was like, oh, sure, we'll figure it out. And we were able to come up with a design. And what was great, there are 26 schools. I developed the design and broke it up into 26 sections. So each school built a section of the Lego tower. They did this over a couple of months, and over a couple of days, we erected it and had a big event, and then they kicked off this major capital campaign. It was almost 112 feet tall. So yeah, there's no curveball you could throw me that I won't take a swing at.
Now you got me thinking about Lego towers and maybe making a model of our new school, right? So,
I was just gonna think, Phil, on those curveballs, how often do you strike out?
Oh, well, many times, but that's okay. I'll go down swinging.
we appreciate all your efforts, Phil. We really do. And we appreciate the calm demeanor throughout this. It means a lot. And I think it keeps a levelness to the committee as we go through some of these hurdles. It's not so much the challenges, it's how you approach them, I think, that matters. So I'll leave it there. So without any further discussion, I'll ask for any last comments from the committee. And I'm sure we'd all love to go back to our lives. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Shockley.
Oh, Kathy
Second
doesn't think
from-
you should make that motion. Hold
We
on.
haven't made the motion to actually schedule the meeting.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh,
Point
that's
of order. Thank you. It's getting
Yes.
late. I apologize.
That's
Can
okay.
I get a motion to schedule the next meeting on the 26th of January at 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I got a second. Can we do a roll call,
Yep,
Chris?
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Alita Hall,
Yes.
Amy Anzalone,
He had to step off.
all right, Don Cowart,
Yes.
Christine Kennedy,
Yes.
Kimberly Shockley,
Yes.
Robert Levate,
Yes.
Joe Lucian,
Yes.
Jason Martin,
Yes.
Miss Patno,
Yes.
John Price,
Yes.
last but not least, Lee Restall.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you for the point of order. I appreciate it. Now, I would like a motion to adjourn at 8:17 p.m.
So move.
Thank you,
Second.
Jason. Lita, you have the second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I am going to do a raise hand vote on this one. I'm assuming you all would like to adjourn. So all in favor? And all opposed? Thank you very much, everybody. You have a wonderful
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks. Lou.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.